how do you become self-aware? Self-awareness is something that was never really explained to me. It wasn't really something that I was shown a clear path of how to get there and the kind of things that I needed to do in order to become self-aware. Before I get into this episode, first it's important to define self-awareness. Self-awareness is generally defined as the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. And why self-awareness is important is because you will get the opportunity to regain control of your life, regain control of your emotions. You will not be guided by your emotions, your behaviors, and what is immediately attractive. It's easy to see on social media a 30-second clip of why you should put down your phone, or motivational videos from Jocko Willink or David Goggins or the likes, but it's hard to put it into practice in terms of practical tools in order for you to actually stop relinquishing some of the control that your impulses might have on you, relinquishing some of the control that your desires might have on you, and becoming that bit more self-aware in terms of how am I feeling, what motivates me, what are my desires, and what am I feeling. Over the past few years, this has helped me in order to understand who I am. I think anybody who's watching or listening to this has a desire to understand who they are and what they want and how do they fit into the bigger picture. How do you fit into the world? What is your role? And the first step in this whole self-discovery kind of industry, or quote unquote self-improvement industry, is that first step of self-awareness. I think I might have jumped the gun and gone to point 9 or 10 in some other of the videos, when the most important thing is self-awareness, is the conscious acknowledgement of how you're feeling internally, how you're feeling emotionally, how you're feeling in all of the domains of your life that we're going to get into. But it is the most important part. It's the cornerstone of your journey, whatever that looks like. Because I was guided by what I wanted. I was guided by what society wanted from me. I was guided by my insecurities. I was guided by my impulses. I was guided by the big shiny object and always running towards it. Now, that's not me saying that those things don't have a impact on me at the moment. It's a work in progress, but I'm a lot more conscious of it. I'm a lot more aware of it, and I am slowly but surely trying to tackle with it and understand it and understand myself. So I'm going to share some steps that I think could be useful for you to begin becoming self-aware. Begin to become conscious and acknowledge your own feelings, your own motives, your own desires, your own character. The first step is separating yourself from your thoughts. This is really important. This is really important for those of you that might be listening that feel like your consciousness is directed just from your brain alone. I was having a conversation with somebody last week, and he self-diagnosed himself as somewhat of an overthinker, and he can never just acknowledge things as they are. He goes into deep thought processes of how to get himself out of certain situations and thinking his way out of overthinking. which I am victim to also doing, and kind of trying to use that intellectual horsepower in order to try and get me out of the situation that overthinking got me into. It's a bit of a negative spiral, and it's a bit of a kind of positive feedback loop that the thing that got me into the problem was overthinking, and I'm thinking that thinking is going to get me out of the problem. It just gets me deeper into the problem. But separating yourself and taking that step back and acknowledging that, okay, these thoughts that come into my head, they're not me. These emotions that I'm feeling, they're not necessarily me. It's how I choose to perceive those, how I choose if I wish to use those, and if they will be important. And kind of, when you are thinking something, don't label it good or bad. If you have a thought and what you might deem a negative thought, not labeling it bad or shameful, acknowledging it, allow it to exist, notice it, and then choose to do whatever it is that you wish to do with it. This first started when a few years ago, a completely maybe useless anecdote was when I started becoming that bit more self-aware, that bit more conscious of the feelings that I was feeling. I remember being caught behind a really slow driver back in Ireland. And usually this would have infuriated me. This would have made me want to blast the horn and start shouting and just cause my whole day to go into a negative spiral of anger-fueled resentment towards the lady who was driving at 20 kilometers an hour in a 60-kilometer zone. This would have led for me to come home in a stampede and upheaval my whole house and start blaming other people about unrelated scenarios, because the thing that set me off was the lady who was driving at 20 kilometers per hour. Instead, this time, I noticed the anger build up in me. I noticed the feeling of outrage starting to brew, and my initial instinct to start cursing her and blow the horn at her. And even when I noticed it, I started laughing, and then I accepted it, and I understood that I was feeling the emotion, that I was feeling the anger, that I felt it creeping up. And then I just decided not to feel it anymore. I decided instead to be like, okay, it's not the end of the world. It's probably a little old lady who's terrified of the road, which it turns out it was. And I just moved on with my day. And that was one snippet of multiple things of this cascade of, okay, I'm becoming a bit more self-aware of some of the feelings that I'm feeling, some of the emotions that are passing through me. They're not going to regain all the control that they previously would have. They're not going to take a grip of how I feel and impact me to such a detriment like they previously would. So it's about noticing them. It's about almost being a third party and understanding, okay, that's interesting. Why am I feeling like that? Why is this my instant impulse? Why do I want to shout at this person? Why do I want to speak that way to myself? Why am I feeling this feeling in my stomach? And sit with it. I always get a physical manifestation of anxiety rather than kind of a mental manifestation. I feel kind of that pit in my stomach, like that clenching stomach. And it's usually obviously because of a sort of reason, but in the past, for years, I used to get it before big rugby games. I didn't understand it. I just ignored it and just kept going. But now if I get it, I sit with it. If it starts taking over me a bit too much, I start journaling about it. But it's just even the act of being conscious about it and kind of being inquisitive about it, sitting with it and understanding, okay, what is the deep root cause here? Because there's a reason as to why I'm feeling this, But why is that? I'm not going to accept it just purely as is. I'm going to be a bit more aware of it, a bit more analytical, not overly analytical that will put me into a negative spiral or that I will just ruminate about it for the day, but I will be a bit more conscious in regards to it. The second step is you have to understand that it is in your control. It is completely in your control. It's completely up to you to dictate how you feel. No longer do you have to relinquish your control of how you feel to the external environment. It is up to you. It is up to you. It's in your control to become self-aware, to notice your thoughts, to understand your desires and your motivations. That's completely in your control. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not negative, it's not positive, it's not feminine, it's not masculine. If you're a man listening to this, it's not going to make you less of a man. It's going to allow you to be more conscious of who you are, deeply who you are. And then you can go two paths. You can choose to live that way continually. You understand who you are, and that's the truest form of masculinity. In my opinion, it's being your authentic self. Instead of rejecting it like I previously would have, it's stepping into that. Really stepping into that. Obviously, that's one pillar of masculinity. There is many more, as I am finding out. But it's a really important one for me. Really, really important. That is that authenticity. Even for the things that you don't want to be authentic about. Like I would have had a fear in the past about speaking about these sort of things, that they would have been viewed as feminine. But I realized that those are my core beliefs, these are my core values, these are the things that I'm deeply interested in, that I spent the majority of my time thinking and talking about. So I'm going to step into it. Unapologetically. So it's understanding that it's in your control, that your self-awareness is completely in your control, that you do not have to be guided by the things that you were previously guided by. You are the third party sometimes. Your thoughts aren't going to be the things that control you, that dictate what you do and when you do it. It is up to you. The third step is you have to run a self-audit. And when I say self-audit, it means a complete assessment of how you were doing in certain domains. So if for me, this has been something that's been highlighted to me in the past, that I think the easiest way to frame it is how I am emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, maybe socially, financially, sexually. Pick whatever domain you want to do that self-audit through. You can start speaking about some of your strengths, some of your weaknesses, some of the things that might be opportunities for you, and some things that actually might cause you to fail within those domains. Run a self-audit and be completely honest with yourself. That is really, really important. It's important for me to really kind of highlight the fact that this isn't going through and questioning who you are, almost like a disciplinary hearing or a person in the court of law. Like you're really not coming from a place of needing to fix something. It's just acknowledging and accepting and coming from a place of love rather than judgment. It does require honesty, and it's taking a look at yourself in the mirror, intellectually and physically, and kind of plotting where you are on a map, plotting, okay, who am I? And understanding what needs to be rid and where do I need to go. The fourth step is you need to build practices that force you to return to self-awareness. If you have gotten to this point, you're understanding at step 4 that it is in your control, that you are separate from your thoughts. You have done a self-audit, and now you need to start improving in the domains that you think you might need improving. I'm going to be not improving, discovering yourselves in the domains that you deem important. I have an issue with saying improvement because then it will assume that it is linear when it's not. I think viewing it that way has caused me some problems. So focusing on yourself in the domains that you think are important, it could be physically, it could be intellectually, it could be financially, it could be spiritually, whatever. But building practices that force you return to that awareness within that domain is really important, and getting to work on each of them. This is a long process, but for me, some of the practices that really help me regain that kind of self-awareness into whatever field that I'm pursuing is, for example, journaling. And this is only a 5-minute routine, some morning pages. So 3 things that I'm grateful for, 3 things that would make today go well, and then a affirmation. Is that what it is? Yeah, and then at the very end of the day, it's 3 things that went well today and something that I have learned. This is helpful to me because it then starts asking me to go through kind of my life through a lens of, okay, what am I grateful for? What could make today go well? And it's not metrics. Usually it's some small things, pockets of peace during my day. And then it's kind of at the end of the day, running through it again and just continually forcing yourself to reflect upon you, reflect upon your life, reflect upon the internal state of your mind. A second tool that I always do is checking in with myself. Checking in with myself. This is in the form of the men's circle. And that would be when you have 5 minutes to check in with yourself. Okay, how am I feeling physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and sexually? And this is just checking in on a weekly basis and just continually to check in. And then I also check in every Monday, actually, now that I think about it. Every Monday I check in with my coach, aka my brother, who helps me with my performance and health. So that's another check-in. And those 2 things have forced me to be really introspective, really self-aware on a weekly basis for the bigger kind of picture things, and then the journal on a day-to-day basis. Another thing that has helped me, the final tool within this step, is meditation, returning to the now and noticing my thoughts. Something that didn't work for me, did not work for me, quote unquote, in the past, and something that I didn't really think that I could do was meditation. Only when I kind of switched and kind of leaned into more breathwork things did that help, because really focusing on my breath, focusing on my body, focusing on the sensations got me out of my head and into my body. There is other forms of meditation. Meditation is whatever you define it as. Meditation could be going for a run. Meditation could be doing the washing, doing the cleaning, sweeping your apartment, whatever. Meditation could be swimming. I think a really good one that people don't really speak about is swimming. I had this self-revelation last year when I first came over to Dubai. After a few months here, I was at the pool in my old apartment and my internal state was loud. I'm not sure if anybody can resonate with that, but my internal state was loud. My mind was flooded. There was a lot of thinking going on and not a lot of feeling. I wasn't present at all. One of the most important things I'm trying to do now is stay present and putting up little post-it notes and work, stay present. But that's besides the point. My mind was really flustered. It was really cluttered. It was really loud my internal state. Then I got into the pool and went under and dove under the water, and I was under the water and I had this moment of realization where I thought to myself, oh God, wow, it's really quiet down here. I can't hear the thoughts that I previously heard. I can't hear the hum of generators or AC or people shouting or kids screaming or me thinking about the future, or I'm not listening to a podcast, or I'm not listening to music. It's just me and my body, and I'm under the water and it's quiet. That reminded me of the feeling of the deep meditative state that I've gone into through some forms of breathwork, semantic forms of breathwork. So that for me was a little pocket of being completely present, and it's something that I've really started focusing on when I start going to sleep as well, is that becoming self-aware of what I'm feeling, becoming self-aware of my thoughts, becoming self-aware of, okay, I'm in bed now. This is being fueled by reading 15 minutes before bed, and the book that I'm reading is The Power of Now, again. And I think this is important. This is useful for me before I sleep, because the book is about being present and being in the now. So I mean, if I'm reading the pages but not actually reading the words, then it kind of defeats the purpose of me opening the book. So I really focus on being present. I really focus on the words, and then when I put down the book, I get a lot more clarity of mind. I can see behind my eyes, if that makes sense. I don't know if this makes sense, but I can see behind my eyes, and I'm completely present in bed. And as a result, I'm asleep within 5 minutes. Like 5 times this week, I've been asleep by 9:35 after putting down the book at 9:30. I think it actually could have been even less, to be honest, but it was insane. So that's a small tool if anybody does struggle to go to sleep. But it goes back to the idea of being self-aware. Self-aware of my internal state, self-aware of what I'm feeling, self-aware of my emotions, my thoughts, and my senses. Forcing yourself to be aware of your senses really does allow you to become present. And step 5 is start having conversations with others and accept feedback. This is when the importance of being surrounded by the good, the right, your definition of right kind of people, just generally good people that you can have open dialogue with, something that you have felt or something that you've thought about, something that you do, and asking them for feedback if they perceive it the same way. Luckily, I have that. I had that when me and Liam lived together, if anybody listens from the podcast. That environment with me and Liam was completely open, that I never have to assume that I would get judged by what I'm about to say. And we were both genuinely interested about the inner kind of workings of our minds in terms of our feelings, our motives, our desires, kind of what drives us. And it was an open space where we could chew through some of the ideas that we were thinking about ourselves, and understanding that they would be perceived without judgment and lighthearted, and there was no judgment at all. Just being the truest form of yourself, speaking about how you're feeling, speaking about what's front of mind, and just being open. It's something that's always been rooted within me from potentially environmental factors growing up, in terms of constantly having to be aware of some of the emotions that my father was displaying, or being open with what we were feeling when some sort of things related to that happened, and being open with how we're feeling. And maybe that has forced me to be a bit more introspective and a bit more self-aware. But creating that environment is really important. I think it was really practiced with me and my mum, being open with how I'm feeling and analytical and about some of my motives, and her helping me to see some of my blind spots, and knowing that it's from a place of love, obviously, because it's your mother. But the same should be taken into some of the conversations that you're having with good people, and they should be, you should be accepting of others when they decide to open up to you, and you should hold space for it. It has to be in the right environment. I don't necessarily open up to the people in work because I don't think it would be useful sometimes. But I do in terms of my friends and my romantic relationship. And that is accepted, and space is held for that, and feedback, and no judgment. And that goes back to what I said in terms of not viewing it negatively or positively or feminine or masculine. You do have to put a lot of trust in people to assume that they also view it the same way. So you do have to pick those people correctly. If you're listening to this episode, then I'm creating a space in order for other men to be in that sort of an environment that nothing would be judged, that it's open. And by this stage, we already would have had a morning, but every second Tuesday, I'm going to hold in this very apartment a men's morning for the playbook. It's going to involve breathwork. It's going to involve 2 ice baths out on my balcony. And it's going to involve coffee and conversations, chit chats. Everybody's in a different space. Everybody's in a different kind of step of how comfortable they are with sharing some of the things that might be in their mind. And I need to be accepting of that. Sometimes it can be very difficult for people to go from 0 to 100. So for us, it's going to be breathwork, semantic. It is going to be ice baths, coffee, and good chats. No formal, forced, whatever. And then we're just going to feel it out. Completely free of charge. So if you are listening to this, you're free. Early doors on a Tuesday morning, 6:30, then let me know. Just drop me a DM on Instagram. And the reason for that is because the run club, the Playbook Run Club, is obviously both male and female. It's chit chat, it's kind of good conversations, but I think it's important for men to have a space dedicated to men only, where it is only men, and they can be as open as they like. They can be as childish as they like. They can be as, filthy or whatever. Like, there's no judgment. There's no judgment whatsoever. And it's just my natural curiosity. Plus, because some of the guys at the weekends have some difficulties Monday to Friday meeting with people that are similar to them and kind of secluding and isolating themselves. So I think this will be a really good opportunity for that. So that brings an end to this whole video. I do hope you took some value from it. I do hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you in the next one.